Welcome back to Have You Heard, the social media podcast by us here at The Social Shepherd. My name is Zoe, I'm the CEO, and today I'm joined by
Lucy, influence director.
And another Zoe, and I'm social media director.
Lovely. Today we've got a really fun topic, which we get asked about a lot, to be fair, and we hire a lot of entry-level roles, so it's something that we want to be more involved in, a bit more vocal in. But that is how to get a job in social media marketing, and the kind of the best way to go about it. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with Jack and Joey about this yesterday, because we talked about AI and how actually the stuff that we maybe would have been focused on to be really good in an entry level role is actually maybe going through a bit of a tipping point, because the roles that people will be doing will be aided by AI and technology, which makes us more efficient. Different topic. But I think the best place for us to probably start here is, I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what working in social media actually is. So the best way to go through this is probably to go department by department, because there's lots of different roles that you can have in social media, and they require different soft skills, different interests. So I guess if we start with you, Lucy, because you work in influencer, do you want to give the team like a little bit of like a summary of what a typical influencer role looks like?
Sure. How so, though?
Just like
What you do?
what you do,
Okay, fine.
like in a snapshot, and then what are the key skills that you look for someone coming into influencer?
So I think any role working with influencers, you are ultimately trying to identify talent partnerships for your clients, whether it's for their campaign or it's like an always on perspective. And you're trying to kind of build those relationships directly with talent, brief them and get them to kind of deliver content and ultimately deliver really great results. I guess that's it kind of in a bit of a nutshell, but there are so many nuances and layers to kind of what a typical day-to-day looks like, and all the different directions you can kind of get pulled and everything. But I think kind of the main thing I always look for when hiring is, one, you need to have a genuine interest in the influencer industry. And enthusiasm for it. It's not just a case of going, oh, I really love Molly May, and so I therefore want to work with influencers. You have to be very patient as well, because you are working with people, and you're working with agents, you're working with different types of talent, and that takes a whole array of interpersonal kind of skills, and really top-notch communication and organization are the top things I would always say are most important.
I think people don't realize how organized you need to be to work an influencer. Like, you are dealing with and also if you're not organized, you could very easily have a data breach, because you have so much information at your hands basically. So it's super important to be organized. So it's a bit of funny role in the sense that you need to be able to be creative. You need to be able to think where is this audience's headspace at, very strategic in that sense, because your own interests, you can't just go with your, okay, well, we want to target these people, so I think we should do this. You need to actually get into that community and figure out what's needed. So it's quite a strategic role as well.
Yeah, definitely. I say it's a good mix of being a creative thinker and then oh my goodness, I always do that. And now
Analytical.
Oh my lord.
Analytical?
Analytical. Good lord, what just happened? Kind of thinker as well. So it's kind of those skill sets are super important, and as you level up, that becomes even more prominent and everything. So yeah, I would say kind of those are the main things that we would really look for. I mean, it's really hard when you want to get into that kind of industry and you're thinking, how do I even get in there? But I would say for those kind of more junior levels, like being able to demonstrate the sort of skill sets I've just touched upon, but a lot of the time it is genuinely that like enthusiasm to want to do it that really outshines above everything else.
I think the soft skills, to be honest, are probably the most important thing at that entry level role, but we'll have a big chat about that in a second. You've done a fair chunk within your, and you're very young for where you are in your career as well. To be fair, I think that's one thing for anyone listening. If you are going to look for a job in social, you will probably find a younger workforce than you would traditionally find in more traditional forms of marketing like TV buying or CRM, for example. Um, so sometimes you have a lot of people come in that are actually really interested in the role, and then when you get up to that like sort of senior manager level, it's kind of like you've got to work on your soft skills again to then be a great leader and a great manager and stuff. But people have very compact learning time periods working in this industry because everyone is so young ultimately. But you're in organic. You were previously in paid.
I've also done a bit of influencer.
Oh, Lord.
I've done a bit of everything.
Are, how many lives have you lived in your short career?
I know, how many lives. Yeah, I'm in organic now. I think for organic and coming from a paid background, I would always say that the key skill would be really understanding data and getting into the data and performance side of things. And I think that really does determine strategy and how you take an account forward. But then also we have this other side of organic, which is really creative. And you do really have to have an eye for trends and how you can kind of take brands down that route in their own sort of way. Hooks and narratives is a word we use a lot as well in our department. And I think that's also a really key skill, is being able to get a really strong hook and narrative to make that content stand out on the platform and then to get that performance that you want on that platform as well. So I think we've got a hard role because we've got creative, and then also you have to have a performance side to the job as well.
I think one thing I will say about organic is probably organic and creative, I would say, are the two roles that have had the biggest overhaul in our industries. And I say organic because if we go back to when like you were managing Facebook and Instagram accounts, sort of it was a very different creative vibe and content strategy that you needed to now, where you've got TikTok that you're looking at. And I think it's just like there's a lot more to think about in organic in 2025 versus 2015. And that is like a new platform was like, okay, we've got to learn this platform now. Whereas in something like paid and influencer, for some reasons, the principle of what you're doing remains the same within reason. But with organic, you've got to completely learn a new platform. And that it's kind of like if organic don't sort their shit out there, then the rest of the agency can't really move to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I personally think we've got the hardest role.
Oh,
I do.
of course you do.
I do think we do.
Martyr South.
We do have the hardest role in the agency, I'd say.
Okay. All right, it's not competition, okay? I can touch a little bit on our paid team as well. So I think for our paid team, we started off only doing paid social. We had Joey join us, and Joey had a very heavy PPC background. For those listening that might not know, that is pay-per-click, most typically aligned with search strategies, so paid search, display as well. And so we actually made the decision because we were doing really great work from a paid social perspective. And we had clients coming to us being like, could you just take on our paid search as well? Like, you're really good at this. And because we had that skill set, we've now nurtured our paid team into being more of a paid media offering as opposed to just paid social. That is important, and it does set us apart from other strategies because the team have a better understanding of search, which now plays such a huge role in organic social. And it means that for clients, I honestly, if I was a client, I would have one agency manage all of my paid media, just because I feel like you can be more fluid with budgets. They can make a decision, okay, well, search needs more, social needs less. They can be a bit more fluid with it, and there's less reliance on your internal teams to do that. Granted, if you have a big enough internal team to kind of take the holistic paid media strategy and have agencies be specialists, that is okay as well. But I think for the paid team, that is kind of like the base of your analytical and mathematic thinking. You need to be very logically minded. And I'd say like, the order I would put it in would be paid, influencer, organic, creative from the skill set departments, in terms of like your methodical, analytical like that kind of way all the way up to like creative. And granted, every single level has creative in it as well, because our paid social team, they're coming up with ad ideas, ad copy, for example. So, you know, if you are going to work in social, you do need to be a mix of both. But if you teeter more towards the analytical side of things and you're quite a mathematical person, I would suggest paid is probably the right place. And we've had people come in like Rosanna, who initially came in and was like, I want to work in organic. And I was like, tell me a little bit more about your degree and what you really enjoyed and like what you really want to do. And I was like, you're not organic, you're paid. Because she was like, I love maths, I love reporting, I love getting into this. And that was the best place for her to be actually in her career. Now she's having a great career in the paid media side of things. But yeah, that's paid. And I've gone a bit on a bit of a tangent, sorry. Then we've got creative and content, which we mix into kind of content sits with organic, it kind of sits with creative, because the principles of those departments are what's needed there at this point in time. But content for us is people that are going out and shooting always on organic creative, which is the bread and butter of creative. Like if you haven't got a good always on strategy, there isn't really any hope for your campaigns and your above and beyond stuff. Like you need to get in and know your community, and that's what you're doing with your always on creative. But they are going out shooting with clients, mobile first content, coming up with content strategies, ownable series for clients. They are really like the pillar of creative. Then we have an enhanced creative offering, which we're working on at the minute, which is more like that above and beyond creative campaigns. They also shoot ads for paid, for example. So that's a team of, you know, videographers, designers that are working on that as well. So, and then that's your skill set departments. Then we've got strategy and client services going in there as well. So, you know, client services is actually a place that a lot of people start their careers in whenever they go, I want to work in an agency. If people go, I want to work in social, they tend to end up in a skill set department. And if people go, I want to work in a marketing agency, they tend to end up in client services. Do you think that's fair?
I would say so. And like, even I reflect back years ago, like looking for different job opportunities and everything. And there were so many opportunities as account managers and everything. And I mean, even at the time, I still didn't really understand what that entailed.
I thought it meant like, I didn't think it was you were going to have any level of like creativity doing that. I thought it was like almost like a sales manager in a way whenever I was entry level looking at those roles.
And I think working in agencies now, I think, yes, you have to have an interest in working in an agency, but you also have to know every single department to a level to be able to service that client and know what it needs. So it almost is strategic as well, because
it's
you're
so strategic,
that one-to-one with the client, and you're the one that's like, okay, this is actually what they need, and now I need to go to that skill set department to ask for further advice. So I think it is a really hard job to do, because you have to have an understanding of every single skill set and what your client needs,
personalities that you're going to come across. Like you know, I don't think it's any secret here, and I don't think anyone's going to be offended by me saying it, but you are going to find more emotional characters in a creative team, for example, and you're going to find more stoic characters, I would say, in a paid team. Like they're kind of the two ends of the spectrum, and you need to be able to strategically be able to go to a paid media person and work with them and brief them and get that creative flow with them going. And you're also going to need to be able to go to a creative and say, client loved the idea. It's too blue sky thinking. We need to bring it down a notch. And particularly with creatives, that's their baby. Do you know what I mean? Like that was born from their brain, like that they being able to give that feedback and being able to work with them and make it feel like you're a team. And there is such a skill set to client services. And sometimes I think it's underrated in some places.
Yeah, I don't envy anyone who works in the client services role. Like that I know is very much not for me and my skill set. But I think, yeah, if you're able to be able to communicate quite differently depending on like which type of people you're working with, and you'll be working with a whole range of different clients who you work with quite differently and everything. It is quite, I know it's quite I don't know how to describe it. It's just a bit of a like jumble. Like you're juggling so many kind of different types of people, and that takes a very particular type of person to do a role like that.
And the financial and business literacy needs to be really high there as well. Like you need to, you know, within reason, you need to be able to look at a contract, for example, and that we have a commercial team which does more of that. And Jack and I are still very involved in that in this business. But, you know, you need to be able to look at a piece of like a costings document from a completely non-biased departmental perspective. And every single department, as they should, is going to be saying, my department can do the best. That this is what's going to help this client hit their overall objectives. Like, I want the budget. Like, and that is going to be the case. But CS needs to be able to look at it and go, actually, for what this client really wants right now, where we need to prioritize the budget is within this department or these two areas, for example. And then going and having that conversation with another group of directors and being like, completely valid. I'm going to pitch that in 6 months' time once we've hit these milestones within that. And it is a very different role.
Yeah.
Strategy for us is kind of more business strategy at this point in time. We kind of set our base level influencer organic strategies within the departments because those teams are the specialists in those areas. For us, strategy is more so about really getting under the skin of an industry and a business and knowing exactly what that audience is doing from a holistic perspective. And then that is then fed into the deliverable teams for them to be able to say, okay, well, if this is really what we're trying to achieve here, this is where my skill set and my department comes into play here. So what you will also tend to find is that you wouldn't really go straight into a strategic role. And a lot of people come in and they'll go, I love the strategy side of things, but there's a misconception of what strategy actually is. And it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, I would say. But you wouldn't really traditionally go, oh, I've just finished uni, I'm going to go into a strategic role.
I feel a strategic role, it takes, maybe, I don't know if it is controversial, but I do think it takes quite a long period of time to really get to know different industries and applying different kind of research methodology and, I don't know, working across a real broad spectrum of clients and what have you, to be able to go into a more strategic role. Like, I've worked with strategists who they typically have kind of minimum 15 plus years of experience and they're bloody well paid for it and everything.
And I think as well, like Zoe said, you're not exposed to like the pitch side of things really as a junior as much as you are until you get to those higher levels. And again, I think it's having all of those pitches under your belt to be able to be like, look over time at all the pitches you've done and how the landscape's changed to then deliver a pitch that's right for that client with the knowledge that you have.
Craft the right story. Yeah. And, like strategy isn't just putting together, telling the story of the service that you want to deliver and hitting the objectives. It's also like working really closely with client services and going like, who have we got in the room and how are we going to hold their attention for 2 hours? Because no matter how good your presentation skills are, you should still be questioning yourself, how am I going to hold the attention of this room? Because that's a long period of time that you're going to be speaking to people and, are there points where you want to workshop it and stuff? And it's not just strategic in the skill set, but it's strategic in the way it's presented and communicated. And you're right in the sense that training your brain to be able to do that, it doesn't come like that. And being able to, you need to have enough experience behind your belt to be able to look at a brief and go, this brief might have been written by someone who hasn't done this before and we're missing XYZ bits of information. Let's get on a call and work with them to write this brief, because if I brief our internal teams right now, we're going to be setting them up to fail because there's missing bits of information here. So yeah, I think if I was an entry-level person, I would say, firstly, don't be confused whenever you see account executive and account manager everywhere. They are good roles to go into. You absolutely should be applying for them. But what I would say is, if you want to work in an agency, go and work in an agency that specializes in something that you genuinely care about. The best thing for client services or anything of that nature is if you can be an account manager and you love social media, go and do it in a social industry, because the more knowledge you can have, more broad knowledge you can have, the better in that role. And then if you want to work in a specific skill set, it's just about researching the companies around you, understanding how they structure those roles. And you can easily see that on LinkedIn and trying to learn about what soft skills you need to nurture in order to go in there, because we've all been in hiring pools in the last 12 months. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, the most important thing when hiring an entry-level role is attitude and your soft skills. And when we say soft skills, I mean your communication habits, your organizational skills. What else in there?
I think just general enthusiasm and like being able to be dynamic. So like, yes, you might love social and you might love fashion, but in an agency, you're not always going to have a fashion client. So it's also the ability to be able to take that enthusiasm to other clients.
I was going to say, and maybe this is a good word to use, but being more curious.
Oh my God, yes. Like
Having
the
a level of
hungry and
curiosity,
being like,
yeah.
why is that? And like, what's going on here? And like, I like just love when people are like, no, I want to learn more about that. Like, help me learn. And, you know, you don't, in an agency, there isn't really room, savage point, I could get cancelled for saying this, but there isn't really room for people that just want to like show up.
Yeah.
Like you kind of, you want to be there because you're passionate about what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And you want to push things forward and you want to make the best possible work, because clients go to an agency to get the best possible work, to get the best possible talent. And so if you're not turning up and being that, or at least being hungry to be that one day, it's probably not the right place for you.
I think another one is resilience, which is a word we speak about a lot. But in an agency, it's such a changing environment constantly. You can't get emotionally attached to a client or to a ways of working, because that changes literally within seconds, especially in social.
And I think sometimes the thing to bear in mind there is like that open-mindedness about, I see it sometimes in junior team members where they'll be like frustrated that change is happening. And it's like, but this change has to happen because a service offering has changed, or that's not what we're getting clients come to us for. So we have to be agile and adaptable. And it's down to senior leadership to make that change as easy as possible for everyone to adapt and to explain it as best as possible. And that's where I think social agencies find it a little bit difficult, because traditionally you have very young leadership teams. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because they can really relate to everyone. But we've made a huge investment to make sure everyone's got the leadership skills and support there to be able to do that. But being able to understand why change is happening, because if an agency isn't changing and evolving, it is genuinely going backwards, because the industry changes so quickly. Like, look at what's going on with TikTok. Like, I think we're at a really good place with the team, particularly with the US team, who's going to have the biggest impact, where they're all sat there going like, yeah, we probably will be called into a meeting on Monday and there's going to be a huge change in the agency. But we know we work for a company that cares for us, that is going to do everything that they possibly can in order to protect our jobs, in order to make sure that we can move forward in the best possible way. So that resilience piece, and that, again, curiosity and resilience, and being able to go, I don't really understand what's going on here. Can you explain it to me a little bit better so I can get on board with it as best as possible?
Right.
The other thing that I think aligns to what I was talking to Jack and Joey about was the whole thing about AI. Because if we take paid, for example, the amount of time that is traditionally spent on things like campaign building, manual copywriting, for example, at that junior level, that is going to change over the next couple of years. And I'm not to say that, agencies should not be reliant for AI to do full jobs. At this point, it is just support and make people as efficient as possible. But for example, we're building our own tool internally to help with ad copy variations. And so where we'll be able to put like our brand guidelines, our TOV documents in there, and it will be able to churn out 100 different types of ad copy variations. Now, where traditionally you would have maybe an exec or a senior exec do the base of those ad copy variations, that it would go to a manager to review. That is going to be the exec isn't going to be writing the base. They're going to be optimizing the base before it then goes to a manager. So we're just using AI to help us take something from being good to amazing, instead of starting from scratch to go to good to then for the manager to take it to amazing. Does that make sense? But it is a different skill set. And so the skills that you need to know is you need to be able to prompt, you need to be able to use it, you need to be able to get on board with it. So if I was an entry level at the minute, I would want to be turning up to interviews and going like, yeah, do you know what? I know how to use ChatGPT. I'm not reliant on it by any means. Here are the downfalls in using it or other tools of that nature. This is how I think it really supports me in my role and makes me more efficient.
Sure. Have you seen the recent Future of Work report by the WE.
I have not. Tell
So I
me.
sent it to the SRT yesterday. It's about 230 pages long. However, I was seeing loads of videos on it on TikTok the other day where people were like pulling out all the kind of key takeaways from it and everything. And it was saying, you know, X million number of jobs are going to go away by like 2030, but then it's going to help create about 100 million plus roles. And it was going through kind of, these are the roles that are really kind of growing and are going to become even more important. And no surprise, it is all kind of very much AI, data, UI and UX and everything were kind of really coming up as prominent roles. And then you see kind of the ones that are in decline and everything. But then you also see the skill sets that are going to become more prevalent in the future and everything. And a lot of it was kind of, yeah, I think it was just around that side of AI and the more kind of like being able to use certain technologies and everything. Are the sort of things that are going to be really important. But obviously anything that involves things like manual data entry, for example, manual XYZ, it's just so in decline. And I think, again, if you are someone who wants to enter into an industry like this, just being open and adaptable to kind of changes and everything is really important, just to kind of keep at the forefront of what you're doing, because how social works now is not going to be the same in 5 years time, 10 years
We're all
time.
going to be wearing specs soon.
We'll just be computers before you know it. I've accepted that.
Wasn't it the two rising ones that we could only see in our industry was strategy and digital marketing?
It is going to be strategy and top level creative, because like that can take and do better than AI can do. But the skill set there is a lot. Like, you've got to be really well trained, and you're not going to get there if you haven't got the passion.
And that made me think as well around, you know, we've seen it with traditional digital marketing specialisms such as paid media and organic search and website management and things like that are being taken more in-house, because there are people, or a significant portion of people, who've been in agency environments and then gone in-house to kind of execute that. I wouldn't, you know, I think it is quite common to see more in-house social media roles these days, and I'm sure that might continue to grow, but where, you know, agencies and everything in the social media space may be able to offer more support, probably is more from that strategic perspective.
And we see that with our clients, to be fair. You know, depending on the size of business, there's a certain size of business that will outsource everything to an agency for certain community, etc. And we've had it with clients, and it's actually really nice where we grow with them. And it might be that they take some of that, you know, more administrative, more day-to-day level tasks in-house, but then so that means that we can spend more of our time on that bigger strategic thinking and really pushing them forward and amplifying them as a brand. So that's quite nice in a way, and I do agree with you that we'll see that. But that leads me on to a really good topic: in-house versus agency. I've only ever done agency. So have you ever done agency?
I've only ever done agency.
You've done this.
Yeah.
Right. Tell us the difference. What type of person best suits in-house and what type of person best suits agency?
I mean, the thing is, I started out in-house and I did 4.5 years there, and it was quite like a corporate client. Lol, you can tell I've worked in agencies now for a while. Business, sorry. And it was a FTSE 100 business as well. And there you are slightly more broader in terms of what you're doing. A lot of what I was doing at the time was managing agencies to execute PPC, paid social, video marketing, things like that. And I think you just need to have kind of more of a broader understanding of the different specialisms and skill sets and everything. I won't lie, it can become a bit more day in, day out. It all starts to become a little bit, not samey, like you will go through periods where, oh, that's a challenge or that's a change or something. But everything becomes quite expected what you're doing. Whereas in an agency, and I remember when I moved from in-house to an agency role, an agency I was working with at the time, they said to me, it's almost like being on a continuous hamster wheel. And I honestly would
You've
say it's
quoted that
like,
to me in a one-to-one
yeah,
before.
it is. And it's like, oh, it's kind of almost like you join and like, you know, when you're on a treadmill or something and you're like just slowly, like the pace is like, you know, you get it to like get quicker or whatever. And then suddenly you're just like full speed. It can sometimes be like that in an agency. But I think if you are someone who is just open to, you've got a lot of like energy and hunger and you want to get stuck in and you want to kind of grow and evolve and progress quite quickly, 100% an agency environment is really right for you. Whereas if you're someone who you want to take more of a holistic view of everything and you want more kind of an overview of all the different kind of marketing channels that you might be working on, in-house and you really want to kind of nurture a particular brand
or a particular industry.
Exactly.
Because we've had people come here and go in-house where they've maybe like they like social, but they love sustainable fashion. Do you know what I mean? And that, like, for an agency to say you're only going to work on sustainable fashion brands, that's probably not going to be possible because they might have one. There also might be a non-compete clause against that brand. So I would say, like, if you are like, I want to work in this one particular, if you love the industry more than you love the craft, go in-house. If it's the craft, like if you're like, I love social, I find that space so interesting. I have really great interest in like these couple of industries, so I would love to do that work, but I understand I'm going to learn from other industries too. Then agency is a good place.
And I was going to say, sometimes like 3 months in an agency is the equivalent to a full year or even a year and a half or something in-house. 100%. I would say in-house. I remember I probably do like 2 big projects per year, whereas I feel like here it's like that we've got this one thing over here and then this one thing, and they're like huge pieces of work. And just maybe that was just more in the role I was in at the time where and everything, but I don't know, I would say the pace is just so much more rapid and everything just evolves far more quickly.
Do you think progression is quicker in an agency?
100%, because I don't know. I guess sometimes as well, like when you're in-house, things can get a little bit more political in terms of the internal politics and which department owns what and everything. And therefore, there's all these ongoing internal conversations around what that side of the business really looks like. And it just takes so much longer for them to then figure out how to develop those teams and the structures and everything. Typically in-house, there are more kind of progression structures. That's actually not 100% true. I don't know, it varies.
I was going to say, because in-house, there is actually a cap on how many people they can have in a department. There's only so much social media a team can do.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? So whereas in an agency, if the agency is growing, that just creates, like, the pyramid just gets wider and taller and wider. Whereas in-house, there is going to be a point where the pyramid only gets taller and not wider. Does that make sense? Yeah. And when I say pyramid, I mean levels within a business. So, you know, you would have like your C-suite, your senior leadership, director, manager, exec, for example, as
I
the
think
standard
as well,
example.
to that point, in-house, if anybody's looking for roles, in-house job titles compared to agency job titles are not the same as well. You can have a social media manager in-house that has been in that role for 10 years and is actually really senior, whereas in an agency, that progression is quicker. Your titles do go up quicker, but it doesn't align to what those in-house roles are.
I would strongly agree with that.
Yeah, I've always said to Jack, I'm like, I don't know if I would go in-house.
Really?
I don't know if I would suit, unless it would have to be something I was like, I fucking love this brand.
Yeah, I think brand.
A lot of people do it later in their career. They always say it's easier to go from agency to in-house than the other way around.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it depends what stage of your life you're at as well. Like everybody's like, from what I know, loads of people want to work in their 20s and work really hard, and then especially for like women, they then want to take maybe
a level
that
of consistency or something. Because like transparently in an agency, there is a bit of a lack of consistency because things go up and down all the time. It's not to kind of...
You're going to have to push more in an agency. And I think that's why you have to love the craft.
Yeah.
It's also, it is quite exciting. Like, I know pitches can be intense, but like it is fun when you're all like on this journey together and working really hard reward and like the payoff of that win. Like, you know, you've worked so hard on something and you've won it and you've had that industry recognition from senior people in a brand that you love, for example. Like the highs, I think the highs and lows are probably more contrasting in an agency than they maybe are in in-house.
For sure. I guess, yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with either though, and it's really important to recognize that. Like I do look back fondly, weirdly enough, at my time when I was in-house. Just because there were like, it's so hard to describe just how different it is, but it is so different, more kind of culturally and everything. And I've met some I met some really amazing people when I was there and grew so much as a person when I worked in-house and everything. But yeah, I think probably more entry level wise, it probably is a really good idea to explore agency roles.
I think so too, yeah.
Develop your skill set. Whereas I think in-house, it can be really harder, particularly if you want to specialize in something. And I guess to your point, typically, yeah, if you are kind of working really hard for a period of time in an agency environment and you are growing your skill set so exponentially, then it makes sense why a lot of people will then take a moment and go, do you know what? I now really want to kind of take that immense skill set that I've got and just really focus in and like nurture a brand that and do that for a good few years or whatever.
I see a lot of CVs at that like senior manager, maybe director level where they've gone, I worked my way up in agencies and then went in-house for a year. I'm bored. Bring me back to the chaos. Like I think it's almost people that go like, oh, I need a bit of a break. And then I want to get back into it. Like I miss it. It is kind of addictive. The chaos of an agency a little bit.
Sure, agree.
But I think experience is experience, isn't it? Like being able to come into an agency with the experience of how in-house works and be able to educate people
That's
on
really
that,
good,
it's really useful. But then vice versa, being able to go in-house and be like, this is how an agency works, this is how things should be delivered. I think it's all beneficial.
I remember after university and speaking with a recruiter and they were like, do you want an agency role or do you want to go in-house? And I was like, I thought they were talking in a different language to me. I was like,
the terms you don't understand, like it's really confusing. Yeah. Like I remember like applying for like a PPC job. I didn't even know what PPC was. Like you don't really get. Well, when I went to university, like I did a media comms degree, I learned about feminist film theory. I didn't learn anything to do with like what PPC is, what this is over here. So I would actually really recommend anyone looking to go into the industry. There's many materials that you can consume on YouTube. Like loads of agencies have vlogs. You know, get under the skin of it and start to learn about what that business wants culturally.
Agree.
How do you think someone can best prepare for an interview for a role in social media if they have no prior experience?
Oh,
and does it put you off?
No, not at all. I think if you don't really have the experience, taking the time to research the type of role that you are going into and just really unpicking like what are the core skill sets that it sounds like they're looking for here that I can demonstrate and just I think you just really have to kind of hone in on that. And I actually think as well, if you go to an interview, there's nothing wrong with being honest and saying, do you know what, I don't actually know how to do that, but I really am hungry to learn about it.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully not about every single thing, but like there's nothing wrong with that. And I remember like Hannah, who's in our team, saying to me in her interview, do you know what, I don't know the difference between organic, creative, that I would brief a UGC creator, and paid social creative. And now she's like doing all of that and she's like killing it and everything. And it's like, she was honest and said, I don't know the difference, like how I would brief a creator differently for paid social creative, but she's taken the time to kind of learn, and that's totally okay.
I think that doesn't put me off. I think we've had interviews where people just don't get social, and I would rather you get social and have a genuine interest in social and understand the landscape and
speak the language
and know what people want to see on the platform than know how to post a post on HeyOrca. I would much rather that. I think you can teach stuff but you can't teach like enthusiasm, attitude,
For
and
me, it's
interest.
like brute determination. Like I love, like Tom, for example, like came as an intern, just pestered Jack and I for 6 months, and then didn't even need to go to uni, came straight in here. Like, and Jeremy, for example, like didn't he like ring the doorbell and like bring a CV? Like that, like brute determination of like, I want to be here. Like, please give me an in. Like, I'll come and do an internship or whatever. Like, I just think reach out to someone on LinkedIn, ask to go for a coffee. That to me just signifies like, I'm here. I want to be here.
That was, I would say, that was the one thing, the best thing out of all the debt I got into uni, that came out of it was like, if you want something, don't sit around and wait for somebody to reply to an email. Pick up the phone, go to the office. Like, it is that's going to get you the furthest in your career.
I agree. One of my pet hates is sometimes I see it in entry level roles, and I think I even might have done this whenever I was first interviewing, is people might go and do a job before they start interviewing whilst they're at uni in like a really small company, or like they start a company with their friends, and they come in and go, I was head of social at this like 2-person company. And I'm like, please don't say that. Like, because it also shows like your level of naivety as to what that job title entails in the industry. Use that and say like, I've got experience because I took the proactive initiative to do this. But coming in and going, I'm a head of social, that's not going to land very well in the room, because you're probably interviewing with the head of social that spent 10 years to get that job role. And so I would always like advise anyone in entry level position, just be honest, be enthusiastic, have brute determination, but don't try and overinflate your experience to a point that it's not, because it's only going to set you up for failure, and most people can see through it.
Yeah, 100%.
What are certain things that people at entry level roles, or to be honest, anyone at any level that has done an interview that stood out for you?
I'd say more recent ones, when they actually, it feels like you're almost having a conversation with them, rather than it's question answer the other way around. Again, like someone who's just recently joined our team, she had such a good interview rather with us, because she actually, we were going through like a task she prepared and everything, and then suddenly it was like, so I'm really curious, like I'd love to understand a bit more about how you do this, and what about that? And she was really curious about the role and like how we actually went about to execute certain things and everything. And it didn't feel like, I was having to go through my notebook and kind of go, have I asked her that question? Have I asked her that question? And all these things naturally kind of got covered. So I think if you are going into an interview, just remembering it's a two-way street, and it's not this kind of cold and hard situation that you're going to be in where you're just going to be responding to loads of questions. Like, you do need to show that level of enthusiasm and interest still, no matter what.
When people don't ask questions in interviews.
When people have questions ready, I'm like, yes, bring it on. I'm like, what do you want to know? Like, that's the best bit for me.
Definitely.
Because also in an agency, like, it is that curiosity, and by someone, it's like, think about what you're implying with all of your actions and statements in an interview. Like, by asking questions, you're implying, I care enough about this to really want to know what I'm getting myself into. I'm curious. Like, I know that I don't know everything at this point in time. Like, think of what you're really showing. Also, like, working in an agency, you do need to have really good communication skills wherever you are. Like, my bet is if you don't follow up after an interview, like, that really irritates me. Like, you should always follow up, even after an intro call. And also, like, if you can own the room a little bit more in an interview and be like, okay, so what I've done is this. Do you want to ask questions throughout, or would you like me to present and wait to the end? And by those little signals, what you're showing is, I know how to effectively communicate, and I know what happens in this environment, even if I don't have experience in it. So, like, I always say to people, there's so many training things. You like, go and watch, I don't know, bloody Simon Sinek's thing about how to do a good TEDx talk. That will teach you things.
Definitely.
I really like as well, like, if you're going for a creative role and you've asked to do a task, like, show me through that task how you're creative. Like, think outside the box, because ultimately, if we go into pitch, that's how we have to think as well. Or if you go into a client content storm, that's how you have to think. So I need you to show me that and how you're going to be creative. that's not just on a PowerPoint. Like, go and film a video of you doing it, or like go and just think a little bit differently. Like, think of what everybody else is going to do and then think of how you're going to be different to that. I think that really stands out for me in an interview.
Yeah, because everyone's been given it's the same in a pitch situation. Like, if we really want a pitch, we'll go, hey, well, this is what we've been asked to do. What more can we do on top of that to show how enthusiastic we are here? And whether that's going at the end of it, you know, this was the task, but here's some other thoughts that I had that would be really good that I thought we could tap into, or here's some creative that I actually made to show you. And I think that's one thing to echo, is that I think a lot of people get scared about making things for interviews or suggesting things because that's their IP and they feel like it's going to be stolen. And I have seen companies do that before, but we would never do that. Like, we would never take an idea. Did it happen to you?
My first
Not
ever,
here though,
no,
just
no, no,
clarify.
no, no. My first ever like proper marketing role interview post university. They took all my ideas and actually executed them.
I've heard horror stories of people interviewing for like big fashion houses and they're asked to design mock-ups and then they see them on a paid social ad and they haven't. It's really bad. But what I would say is, like, if you really do want a role, like, we would never take someone's ideas and put them somewhere. That's so immoral. It's so incorrect. If someone came and had a really good idea and then they got the job, we might go, hey, we'd love to pitch your interview idea to the client. Like, are you down for that? Like, is that all good? So I would always suggest, like, please don't be scared to do that. I know there are horror stories, but any moral agency, particularly in an agency, because ultimately as an agency, you're selling your team's ideas. So that is so just not okay to take someone's work and then bill for it. So I would suggest, please don't be scared to go above and beyond and show more creative ideas, because it just helps sell you even further. And if you put forward an idea that somebody's like, oh my God, we should actually do that, massive green tick.
Yeah.
And then, have we got anything else? What's one piece of advice that you would give yourself whenever you're starting your career?
Oh, I would probably just say it's really hard to do, but just try your very best not to compare yourself to other people. Again, like, I reflect back when I was really trying to get into marketing post-university with such minimal experience. And I remember I would go down like LinkedIn stalking holes and stuff and be like, oh, well, this person went to uni with me and they're now doing this. Like, how did that happen? And I would get really het up about it and really frustrated. And I would get really defocused on what it is that I was actually trying to do.
Is like your worst enemy.
So there's a level of comparison that is healthy, and trying to understand, oh, how did they get from there to there? And what can I take from that and maybe be inspired by or something? But just try and avoid going down too many rabbit holes there and just stay focused with what it is that you're trying to achieve. I would probably tell myself.
I would say do your research into what you actually want to do. And luckily it worked out well for me, but I did go in blind into my first paid social job thinking it was something completely different to what it was. So I would probably do research into the roles and where you feel like you're best suited. I do think there's a level of, you know, get your foot in the door and then change when you have that experience. And I think that's what a lot of people do, but just know the direction that you want to go in, I think.
And on that note as well, if you do go it, like, particularly in an agency where you've got such a plethora of roles available, we've had so many people come in and go, oh, I've come into this role, but actually I really want that role over there. Have that open communication. And if you are working in a company that like really fights for its people and wants everyone to do well, like, they'll do their best to make that happen for you. And it might be a case of not right now, but in 6 months' time or whenever a role is available, we'll make sure that it's a priority to come to you with that. Here's what you can do in the meantime to make sure you're prepared for an interview should it come about.
And I think when that's happened quite a lot of times here, and also with myself, and people say to you, go and show us that you've worked and that you can do that and give us evidence that you can do that. And that does entail you doing that in your own time. Do not expect to just be handed that job. You have to show that you can do it, and you have to show that you genuinely have an interest in it. And that does mean you have to do it in your own time. So just don't sit back and really work for it if you want it.
I think in general, it's you get out of your career what you put in. Does that make sense? And you get out of a workplace what you put in. So if you are someone that's going to like really go above and beyond for the team, like put your hand up and say, hey, let me help. Like, what can I do here? That employer is naturally going to be like, do you know what, that person like kills themselves. Like, let's see where we can support them. Like, how can we get them to the next step in their career? And any good employer is going to be doing that anyway. But the more you can show that you're willing to support them and do that, you're going to get more from it. And I think the more of like a community feel and like togetherness that you can create, the more you're going to have real advocates above you for your career and like really wanting to push you there. So I would just say, like, particularly in an agency environment where everyone is so skilled and they are specialists in their environment, like, push yourself and be that person that people can really rely on. And, you know, just like positive vibes. Agencies are a lot, so we need positive vibes.
What advice would you give to 18-year-old Zoe or 21-year-old Zoe?
I mean, I was really confused. I went for a job interview for a marketing exec role in an agency. I thought I was going to be marketing for clients. I was on the new business side of things. But again, it worked out for me because I was really well set up for whenever I started this agency. But the reason I got that job was, firstly, I had no clue what was going on when I walked into that interview, but it was between me and another candidate. And the reason that I got it was because I was just like quite confident in that room. And I guess at entry level, sometimes you do come across more nervous personalities, which is to be expected. Like, you're new at this. But the more that you can kind of like put your gameplay face on and be like, do you know what, this is what I think, and important. Don't overassert yourself, but a level of confidence is important. And like, just don't doubt yourself.
Yeah, someone's got to get it, and why can't it be you? So,
and just like, if you're putting energy into something and you're going above and beyond and you're being proactive, putting good energy into place, I'm a bit hippie in the sense that I think that good energy will come back to you. And I think it can be hard to keep up momentum, particularly if you are hearing no's, but you will get there. And like, reach out to people and like learn what they and take their advice on board, because you never know, you might have coffee with a marketing manager somewhere who has a friend who has a job opening here, like, hey, I know this person. That is super important. I wouldn't suggest necessarily going to all of these like big networking events. Personally, I hate networking. It makes my soul want to die. But the quality of your network and the people that you build around you in terms of quality connections is important.
Yeah, nice.
Any final words?
I think I just agree with you. I think it's have time for people, speak to people, because those ultimately are people that are going to connect you with other people that you might get the job with. So I would just talk to people and get advice and see where it takes you. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you both for joining, and thank you for listening, watching, wherever you are consuming this piece of content from. Please make sure to like, subscribe. We publish videos on these topics and a broad range of other ones on a weekly basis. But for now, have a lovely rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon.